AskReddit by Baby Lovin'. What's the most bizarre or interesting fact you know that sounds fake, but is actually true? Steve Irwin and Charles Darwin both owned the same tortoise. Her name was Harriet and lived to be 175 years old. She loved being 174 a little bit more. Armadillos always have identical quadruplets. Cool. My grandson is armadillo obsessed. I will pass this on. The star Betelgeuse formed well after the dinosaurs went extinct. It's less than 10 million years old and is expected to go supernova within the next 100,000 years. The color orange is named after the fruit. This is also why we call gingers redheads, and not orange heads. There was no word for that color hair, so folks just came close. 76114103880. One day on Venus is longer than 1 year on Venus. It's also the only one of 2 planets in the solar system that spins clockwise. All the others spin counterclockwise. It's been theorized it had some sort of collision with another planetary body, which is why it spins funny. Some blind people can see. The eyes work but the brain can't interpret the info. My mother had a friend that woke up one day and was blind. Apparently she had developed a tumor that pressed against an optic nerve or something that halted all information between her eyes and brain. She's got some eyesight back through operations though. The highest peak of Mount Everest was first measured at exactly 29,000 feet but was instead reported as 29,002 feet to avoid the impression of an estimate. The first person to put 2 feet on Everest. Thank you QI. There are, unfortunately, no recorded cases of pirates forcing people to walk the plank. You can thank Hollywood for this. The original practice is keel hauling, which is much worse. However, it isn't very good on film. Not a single of Pakistan's 29 prime ministers has fulfilled their term. Ponderosa pine bark smells like ice cream. Mostly vanilla, sometimes strawberry, and seldom chocolate. We used to go around the woods back home, smelling trees and yelling what flavors we found. Whoa, all my life I've smelled something in the woods now and then that reminds me of vanilla but couldn't track down the source. I assumed I should be looking for a flower of some kind. No one ever knew what I was talking about when I'd pointed out. Maybe it's this bark, huh? Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids were built at roughly the same time. And the pyramids look like shit compared to what they used to look like. Originally it was all smooth sides and white limestone. We only have the blocky core left now. And didn't they also have gold tops? Or at least I believe the Great Pyramid did. You are 10 times more likely to get bit by a New Yorker than a shark. I believe it. It's a lot easier for a New Yorker to make it to central Canada than a shark. Narcolepsy is often mistaken for insomnia or depression. Treatments for narcolepsy and insomnia can also be similar because both can heavily impact the quality of your sleep as much as they impact how much you sleep and when. I have severe insomnia and a friend with narcolepsy and we bounce ideas off each other sometimes. The city of Paris took the rats to court in the Middle Ages for causing the plague, and thanks to a brilliant public defense attorney, the rats won the case. Not Paris, Autumn. And not plague, but grain. But the point stands. https://bearistotle.substack.com/p/the-trial-of-the-rats-of-autumn. On the 3rd of March, 1983, former NFL quarterback Terry Bradshaw checked into a hospital and used an alias to disguise himself. The fake name he used was Tom Brady. In 2005, Michael Vick was sued by a woman who claimed he knowingly gave her an STD. Per the lawsuit, he visited an STD clinic under the name Ron Mexico. For a long time you could not buy a custom NFL jersey with the name Mexico. There was a time in 18th century England that playing the bagpipes was punishable by death. That was just anti-Scottish sentiment, right? Because of the Jacobite rebellion or something? When the Great Pyramids of Egypt were being built, there were still woolly mammoths walking around. Cleopatra lived closer to the modern era than the creation of the pyramids. Pyramids finished in 2490 BCE. Cleopatra alive 69-30 BCE. She was also comically inbred. British military tanks are equipped to make tea. John Tyler, the 10th President of the United States, was born in 1790. He has a living grandson. 3 generations cover almost the entirety of US history. He's also the only US president laid to rest under a flag other than the flag of the US. I once had a housemate who was born in the 1700s, and I am not quite 50 years old yet. It's true. When I was a baby, my great-grandfather briefly lived with us. I'm my family's genealogist. I learned from a census record in England that my great-grandfather had lived in the same house as his great-grandfather, who was born in 1797. This is very cool. When I was a child, I met my great-grandfather who was turning 100. He was born in 1858. I can't comprehend being 2 degrees of separation from the 1700s. When the Aztec Empire was founded, Oxford University in England was already 300 years old. This one always reminds me that Harvard was established before calculus was invented, which is a mindfuck. Your skin doesn't have a specific sense organ to let you know if it's wet or not. Yet just temp. Air temp alcohol with a cotton swab and water with a cotton swab on the wrist. The alcohol feels wetter because it is cooler due to faster evaporation. The Vikings of Norway were apparently so good at bow hunting elk while skiing that the practice was outlawed as a conservation attempt. Also, Viking women had a fair amount of legal power for the time period. They could divorce their husbands for things like cheating, abuse, or wearing clothing that was too feminine. I'm a historical fiction author, so I've got dozens of more facts if you're interested. The Vikings were also really loose with their religious beliefs. A Viking could worship Thor, and another Viking could worship Odin, while another one worshipped Jesus, and yet another worshipped Zeus and Odin, and they would all be fine with each other. This is really why they integrated into different cultures so well. They would conquer a region, but wouldn't be seen as true rules because they were viewed as barbarians. So, they would convert to Christianity, because to them it was, fine, I can worship Odin, Thor and Jesus. The age of Vikings ended because they set down roots, converted and married into local areas. Jack Black's mother worked for NASA and created the technology that saved the Apollo 13 astronauts. She gave birth while finishing the technology that would eventually save Apollo 59-45D7, 8466, 002F45C5A308. She also has many more accolades. Jack Black's brother, Neil Siegel, https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Neil_Siegel, is also an incredibly accomplished engineer like their mother, creating many systems that we take for granted today. And also an incredibly talented musician. Jack Black isn't even the second most interesting person in his family, and I don't say that to diminish his talent. There have been more prime ministers of Israel born in Belarus than there have been prime ministers of Belarus. This is actually a new and weirdly hilarious one to me. WTF are the odds?